Hey folks, I just want to start by saying thank you to all of the people who reached out after learning that my fur child passed away on October 4th. So, yeah, I've written a community post with more details if you want to go back and read that. Thank you again. Hey folks, Sasha here, and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be making a cute Goth custom doll, because that's spooky season and honestly, any excuse to do Goth is a good excuse in my book. I am a filthy millennial who is less than a month away from turning 36 years old, yes, and I'm a Scorpio, an old Scorpio. And well, Goth culture and aesthetics is very close to my heart, and it has been since the old days of my teenage years, which were the horrible early 2000s, so yes, I was there. I was shamefully beautiful. I say that because I heard that my pieces have kind of an old-timey Goth feel to them, and I'm not against it, so yeah. As you can see, I am prepping a Frankie Stein Monster High doll for this one. She also already had clothes, but more on that later. After decapitating her using boiling water to soften the vinyl, I cleaned her face with some pure acetone. Any heavy-duty nail polish remover can do for this step, and it's usually easier to find and much cheaper. Just try the dollar store. A lot of pure Goth beauties have black hair, so in preparation for her future luscious locks, I painted the doll head scalp with some acrylic paint. After I was done, I jumped to the best part, which is the face. I had beforehand primed my doll's face with 3 coats of Mr. Super Clear Sealant, and then I started the face up with some soft pastels. I have here some white from Panpastels, which is the most pigmented brand that I know of. Sadly, I cannot afford more colors at the moment, but it will still have to do. I covered the whole face with it, and let me be clear, I was not actually trying to turn her skin completely white. I wanted to see a bit where I could push it, but also give me a base, a powdery base on which I could blend other colors to make her feel generally less green. These took a couple of layers to get the base shading and contouring there. It's condensed down for the video, but just know that it took about 3 layers of white and mixed in colors to have the base. I still build on it on other layers as well, but that was my starting point. I mainly use, as usual, a mix of coral, cool and warm toned pinks, a hint of orange, and I sometimes add a bit of purple or straight up blue to build up some point of interest, mainly around the eyes or on her cheeks. For this doll, however, I am going in very early with something that's usually very risky, which in this case meant pure black. And I also take the time to shape and carve the eyebrows with pastels, starting light and deepening the colors as I go. Once the groundwork with the pastels is done, I can switch to my watercolor pencils and start defining shapes and details. There's a thing that I'm actively doing on this face that I want to highlight this time around, is that watercolor pencils are water activated. So I am using a damp brush to help me fine tune some shapes, mainly because I tend to struggle a lot with symmetry. For the lips, I want a very dark and ultimately less defined, almost smudged upper lip and a softer, lighter lower lip. I start by defining an area that's going to be pure black eventually, just so I can see where I am going through the whole process. I keep on building shadow layers by layers and I try to get a smooth transition as I can get using a small brush. I then switched to what is now, I feel, my main way of doing the face-ups, which is paint. I am using both watercolors and gouache paints, which are, well, very similar to one another. The brushes that I use here are meant for nail art, and I've even thinned some of them just to try to get some finer lines. Also, pro tip, since the paint I am using is water activated, well, both kinds are water activated, I can always move and remove some pigments carefully with damp brushes, as long as I've sprayed some sealant in between the steps to protect the work done previously. The lashes are especially nerve-wracking for me, especially since I've been trying to master making them both fine and delicate and fluffy somewhat, and my hands aren't as steady as some may think they are, so that trick that I told you earlier about the damp brush is really helping me a lot behind the scenes. I am still struggling a little, well, a lot, about how I want to shade the irises on my doll faces. But I feel like each new face up is getting better than the last. I am keeping in mind that I want some shading and try to mix colors to get some effects. Like here, I'm not sure if it's clear on camera, but I am ultimately using beige towards the highlights in the irises and some blue towards the shadows, while thinking about soft pinkish purple for the desired eye color. After all details were in place, I finished with translucent splotches of paint here and there just to add a bit of texture on the skin. And there she is, all done, and yes, I absolutely adore doing these tiny teeth on dolls. Switching now to hair. I start the process with strands of 100% acrylic yarn, and the first step is to unravel the strands. Then, instead of tying them up and using a brush, I am simply pulling on the fibers to gently separate them. With this method, you are more likely to retain length and also less likely to lose thickness and ultimately some of your yarn. This specific yarn is a bit fluffier than most, but the same method works perfectly fine with more standard, a bit smaller and denser yarns. Once your fibers are as fluffy as you want them to be, you can use a flat iron and this will make your doll hair. From now on, you can still pull and flat iron some more if you feel like you need to separate the strands more, or if it bunches up, or if you want just a finer texture in general. You could also flat iron the unraveled strands before starting to pull them, and it works just the same in my experience. I've processed the yarn then in wefts using a Mod Podge glue to hold them, and once dry they are ready to be glued directly on the doll's head using that same Mod Podge. I also use some pins to hold some of them in place while they dry. When gluing wefts on a doll's head, it's similar, well, the same as if you do a glued doll wig. You want to start at the bottom, on the back of the head, and circle around while slowly itching your way up. I personally let layers of wefts dry well in between, and while I love Mod Podge for that, I feel like it has a great hold and it dries decently fast. I have a ceiling fan too, and it makes a huge difference. When I arrive at the top, I will cut wefts in much smaller sections and encircle the area where I want the part without doing it just yet. I am now left with only a tiny section for the part line, and before I add my wefts on the head, however, I will double them in thickness by gluing two together. I want one set for each side of the head. Then to glue the part, I will first determine the exact line and then I will glue my first weft alongside it, but going backwards, actually towards the part. You want it like that so that once it dries, you can flip it and fold it on itself to hide the band of glue. The second wefts may feel a bit awkward to maneuver, but you actually have to do the exact same thing. And this is where pins can also help you by holding the second wefts very tightly next to the first one, crease against crease. The beauty of yarn is that it creases very easily, so once everything is dry, you should be able to have a very natural result. You can also use something hot and flat to smooth the crease and other places, or wrap the head in cling plastic and let it sit for a couple of hours just to grab on the shape. I said that I didn't brush my yarn, and I lied, well, to some extent. I am using a boar bristle brush, which is very gentle, as well as my flat iron on the side. I'm not sure if it shows on camera, but I'm using them to both smooth, untangle, and sometimes even thin out the hair, as yarn can be extremely thick. Well, there he is, our friend Flatiron. Well, you've noticed that I've also separated a section at the front here, and that's because she's getting bangs. And I meant to do a smooth transition and forgot to actually film the results, so my apologies. Here's a picture. I give her rounded bangs and I curled her hair using a metal chopstick heated in my flat iron because I can't stop myself and I just love curls and waves and I'm addicted. Please send in a professional. And it's not even on the picture. What am I doing with my life? Okay, so now about those clothes. This is what I started with, and yes, I made those. I made them last spring when I was working on my Celestials collection for the Doll Artist Collective, and these were supposed to be for my doll Andromeda. However, I decided after a bit that I wanted more of a black and white look for her, so in the end, I put them to the side. Today, however, we are using them. The original skirt, which was one also a dress, is a bit mangled and I had since removed some of its lace to use somewhere else. The sleeves are cute, though I'm not sure about those ribbon bows. As for the corset, well, it's in rubber blah, it's very well made and very pretty, so I'll be using it as is. The black layer though had to go and I replaced it with a fabric that wasn't as thin and has a bit more body, if that makes sense. on the new skirt, I decided exactly where I wanted the folds to go because I ultimately wanted to sew the black and pink layers together and wanted them to fall just right. I decided I wanted to unite them in thread matrimony because there is a white lining under the pink lace and I didn't want it to show. Then I decided to sew a sleeveless top to go under the corset with the aim of attaching lace at the top to go around the neck. Here is a preview of everything pinned together on the doll body to give me an idea of where this is going. However, since I usually sew the doll's clothes permanently on my customs, I will have to remove everything once I'm happy so I can blush the body with pastels before sewing the finished garment in place. To help the pastels and the sealant, I started by sanding the surface of the body with fine grit sandpaper. This also removed the stitches that were painted on with factory paint, and it can also smooth out some of the plastic seam lines. Then I used the same pastels on the body that I did on the face, though I went in with less intensity. This is how she looks, and I personally love the details on the hands. Now I was able to sew the garment on the doll's body, and I've added a couple of details too, just to make the whole thing more visually interesting. There was also some oops on the side of the pink skirt, just in case I wanted to lace it, but since I've already and, well, quite painfully laced the corset, I decided that I was going to thread some ribbons in instead. And yes, I'm also addicted to dangling ribbons and chains. For the shoes, I decided to go simple and I picked these, which I think are Catherine the Muse, and I decided to just paint them. And of course, last minute arrangements are always a thing with me, so I added a bit of shading just to make sure they weren't too flat. And now all that is left to do is to reunite this lady with her head. I lied. I also added a ribbon on her head. And I fixed minor details, but do you like her? I've decided to name her Eliza after the suggestion made by one of my friends. I'm just gonna say it. Frankie has one of the best monster high face sculpt, and I am ready to die on that hill, period. Also, I definitely want to do more Goth cuties like her. I feel like my style actually fits that theme to a T. Also, if you'd like to acquire her, she'll be available through me on Instagram or on Ko-fi a bit later after this video comes out. There's that. And now I want to give a huge shout out to Addie, who still donates monthly to me through Ko-fi, which is such a great help, thank you. I want to thank also my friend Morgan from buying a doll from me this month, which is helping with those horrendous vet fees. I want to thank Mirania Lavendel Art for her unending support and commissions, which are helping me all year round. Thank you so much for trusting me with your characters. Big thanks to Katarzyna from Sabakunoshi for sending me materials from Poland. I greatly appreciate the support. Big thank you to my friend Simakai, who sent me some fabrics and laces and some dolls found at the thrift store. And again, a big thank you for all of you good people for the large inflow of love I received when I announced that my cat Nico had died. You have no idea how much it means to me. I've been with this love bug since I left my parents' home, and he was my best friend. It really warmed my heart to read all of those messages, folks. A few words can often go a very long way, and please never underestimate the power of being kind, even to strangers. And I'll see you soon, y'all. Take care and stay safe.